This is the Listening Project podcast, sharing our stories to amplify our voices, a project of the RPA. We are Richmond organizers who have listened to residents who are the most harmed by some of the biggest polluters in our rich city. These are our stories.
Thinking about Chevron, it's literally life and death. Maybe not so much like in terms of like the time frame, if you think about it that way, but I think about like my daughter is very young, and if she's experiencing, if she's being exposed to all these environmental pollutants, that's affecting her. That's affecting her genetically, and it's also affecting, her experiences in her environment. So it definitely made me feel really upset.
Hey everyone, thanks for being back with us this week. I'm Danny here with you again. And you just heard from Yvonne. You heard from her last week, but what you may not know about Yvonne is that she's a new mom. And that's what this episode is all about, what it's like to grow up in Richmond, to be a kid, to be on the playground. And I just want to say one thing, just a reminder that we are not medical professionals. We are not licensed in any way to give medical advice, but we do.
Please call your doctor, people. Don't come to us for things.
Yes, but we do a lot of research. So just want to keep that in mind.
Thank you, Danny, for that disclaimer. It's Sol, it's La Prima and La Profe. Super excited to be here with you on another public health episode, going directly into more specifics of exactly what Danny is talking about. When you go from a baby to a child to a young adult, living here in Richmond, and the repercussions of having a refinery and what that does to our health, especially when it comes to asthma.
Hey folks, Alfredo back again. Marisol, you forgot to say don't call me Mary. You missed it.
Don't call me Mary. Sol, don't call me Mary. That's right.
There you go. Welcome everybody. I'm excited to be here again. We're going to be sharing a bunch of stories about folks that have been the most harmed and impacted by the climate crisis. A lot of the reoccurring stories that we heard were regarding health issues. That's a big thing in the community, especially among young people who are growing up with all of these things in the air. Speaking of young people, this episode, we are lucky enough to have a guest with us. We have your boy, Kevin G. Rona Hernandez with us. I'll pass the mic to you, Kevin, so you can introduce yourself to the people.
Hey everyone, my name is Kevin G. Rona Hernandez. I'm an environmental justice organizer in Richmond, San Pablo. I'm a council member with the Air District, and I am also the Associate City Union President for Contra Costa College. And I'm really passionate about research, environmental justice, and air quality, and I'm really grateful to be here.
Yes, thank you for joining us, Kevin. We are so excited to have you.
Yeah, I think we are super excited to get into some more community voices, some folks that you've heard from, some folks that you haven't. As always, we're here to really share our stories, to amplify our voices. And today we're going to be listening to a Christian first, who works at Urban Till, grew up in Richmond, and then Courtney, who is another community leader in Richmond. So let's go ahead.
We're constantly living or having to breathe in Chevron's pollution. So I would say the climate crisis is bad here. Growing up, basically everyone I knew had some sort of breathing issue, whether it's like asthma, but more likely than not, it's related to the refinery.
Well, I live in a part of Richmond where I see the flaring. I work in a place where if there is flaring, people are concerned for not only me as an individual, but for the people I work around with. They will call me to tell me, oh, wait, get the kids in, this is what's happening. And it's basically we're living like kind of in a, on high alert all the time. And that's unhealthy mentally for any of us, especially our children. It's just not healthy to always be on like a watch guard. We have to take a break. We have to, be able to breathe.
And what powerful words from both Christian and of course Courtney. And I think it shows the intergenerational kind of relationships to the refinery, to fossil fuel operations in our backyard. You know, Christian talking about growing up. And then what I really want to touch on with Courtney is, you know, that we have to be our own watch guard. What does that mean for us to always be on alert and have a heightened sensitivity to issues that other communities, predominantly white and wealthier communities, actually don't have to live with? And it goes back to kind of what we talked around environmental racism in our previous episodes, and why and how Black and Brown folks are more impacted than other communities. I also just wanted to point out that you probably heard a little bit of music in the background. As you know, we have collected these audios in real time, wherever we are at, just kind of boots on the ground, really just trying to hear and listen to our community. And Courtney at that time was speaking at Urban Tilt's incredible event, the Harvest Festival. So that's why you heard that beautiful music in the background.
Yeah, shout out Urban Tilt. That event was beautiful. I think I just want to make the point that not only like are we affected negatively from like the stuff that we breathe, but just the stress on us of like having this constantly in our mind, like we know that is like negatively affecting our health. We know that like stress can lead to all of the other like negative health effects that we get from like the same things that like lead to like diabetes and stuff you can get from stress. So like that is bad enough. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Courtney really made a good point, or like Sol really made a good point about like we have to be our own watchdogs. Like that makes like why do we have to do that? Like why do we have to live in a community where like that's a necessity that we have to watch out for our own health, and we have to like be careful about like where we go, not only like outside but also like the air we breathe. And I feel like when growing up, like most of my friends had asthma, and you know, despite about having like a respiratory illness, it's just like it also like influences like anger and just like frustration. You know, like why can't I go outside? Why can't I like hang out with like the other kids and like things like that? So I feel like that's like a really good point that Courtney made and Sol made as well.
Yeah, I actually was talking to someone in the interviewing process, and they brought something up that really hit me. Obviously, I did not grow up in Richmond. I grew up in Long Beach and LA, and we have a lot of similar issues. If you've ever been in the San Fernando Valley, like on a really smoggy day, you can't see the mountains that literally encompass the valley. And that's like something, you know, it's just a similar kind of deal. But someone said that Richmond knew how to shelter in place before COVID ever came. That sheltering in place was a verb, was
And
yeah, like that Richmond folks already knew what that meant because of pollution, because of refinery fires, because of explosions. And
wow.
that gave me chills, you know, because like the whole world has been so impacted by this, and yet Richmond has already been doing it. Like it's nothing new, and that's just wrong. But you know, we're gonna hear more about that, and we're gonna hear from Eduardo, Councilmember Eduardo Martinez, Randy, and again from Courtney. So let's get into that.
I was an elementary school teacher, and when I started teaching, I thought my kids were you know, didn't want to do PE, you know, because they kept complaining about not being able to breathe, and so I started talking to the parents, and I found out that the majority of my students had asthma, and so with some of the parents, we set up a Asthma Club, which you know, what we did was we identified which students had asthma, and then you know, had to set up a different PE program for them, you know, so that you know, they wouldn't have to be taking out their inhalers during PE.
And it's like the silent killer, because it doesn't kill you like the next day you're gone. It's like it attacks you a little bit every single day. And then like year after year, you see the effects with aging, where I can't walk as far, or, you know, I have to stay in the house today, or I have to do the asthma treatment more often for other people. And that's saddening. And there's nothing that can be done. And especially in North Richmond, where they don't have a real government that can support them, right? Like the Richmond, they're not in the city of Richmond, technically. They're unincorporated. So it's really hard to get support for them, where the county is supposed to take care of them, and they don't get those conversations because it's a bigger conversation. And so that's frustrating, especially in North Richmond. So it's sad, especially to our young kids. Like, you know, they can't go out to the park one day because, oh, they're flaring and I smell gasoline. So we have to shut down school for a day. Like, we have to send kids in elementary school home. Like, think about the effect of that. We have to close elementary school. Parents have to leave work early to come pick up their kids because something smells like gas, which hurts them economically, and then it's killing them physically. So it's like a circle. They're getting it from both ways. And you doesn't tell me that eventually can destroy a community. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, Courtney really brings up a lot of really good points. I mean, Randy and Eduardo did it too. It's just growing up in the community and being prepared for kind of all these inevitables. And we really saw that in our survey and the way that people responded. We interviewed a ton of folks, like over 200 folks, and of those people, 53% said that they suffer from some sort of chronic respiratory illness. And of that 53%, 85% say that it has to do with asthma. And an even larger, or excuse me, an additional percent of folks said that they have more than one chronic respiratory illness. And we didn't even talk to kids, you know, so I can't even really imagine how this impacts generations, how this impacts families, but I know y'all know a lot more about that than I do.
Yeah, I remember when my senior year I had to do a research project, and my research project was basically about diesel PM, using vegetation barriers to combat against diesel PM. And I was looking at using CalEnviroScreen, who's like a good tool to like look at your community and like the percentages of like diseases and whatnot. And we're like 91.9%, like the percentile of asthma rates. So it's like higher than the average in California, which is wild to me because I'm like, that's just crazy to me. Like, I never thought that was like it. And I feel like after like a few days when I learned that, I found out that my aunt and my uncle died from a respiratory illness, and they were in the hospital. And yeah, I mean, I think that like really hit a nerve to me. You know, I feel like, I mean, I was still pursuing environmental justice, but to that, I think that just was like the nail in the coffin. Like that was like it for me. Like I wanted to like really keep going and like really focus on like how do I break down these barriers for young people and older folks, older generation folks.
Yeah, I mean, one want to, you know, acknowledge that loss and that really common understanding that we all have, of, you know, like you said, Danny, these are generational issues. These health effects are felt in our community for generations, you know, not only the older generations that have been here for, you know, super long, but we're seeing it, like you said, Kevin, you know, in your family, in our families, in our own health. You know, living with all of these impacts, as you know, as parents trying to take care of children, having to close your windows and not let your kids go outside. You know, like we said earlier, we have known what it means to shelter in place since way before COVID was even a thing. We've been stocking up on N95 masks since the 90s. And you know, for younger people, for students, you know, what does it mean to grow up with asthma? You know, kids are missing out on valuable learning time in classrooms because they have to stay home. They're missing out on valuable lessons, and not even just educationally, you know, so socializing with other kids, sports, health. You know, I was very limited in my ability to play sports when I was young because of my asthma. You know, I had to carry my inhaler everywhere. and if I didn't have it, then I was not playing that day. But I mean, Kevin, what do you have any thoughts? I mean, you're a young person. I'm sure that you can speak also to all of these experiences.
Yeah, I mean, what I was just gonna say was, um, my experience is just like one of out of like a thousands in Richmond, like more than 1,000 in Richmond. Like there's still untold stories that still need to be collected and shared. But in terms of like classroom settings and like growing up, I grew up with asthma. Most of the kids in my grade grew up with asthma.
Hmm.
Fortunately, I grew out of it, but some of those still like those kids that or like my peers, they still have asthma,
Hmm.
unfortunately. And
Hmm.
my best friend has asthma. So it's just crazy to me like that's really like that's still going on. It's just still going on. And they're still living in Richmond too.
Absolutely. And I also just wanted to touch on what struck a chord with me in particular was with what Eduardo and of course Randy had said as well around, the fact that educators, some folks don't know that I'm a teacher at our local community college. And so I just have such a connection to any educator and how we are so student centered, and the fact that council member Eduardo Martinez, had to one immediately assess a situation that other teachers in affluent white neighborhoods usually don't, because they actually have access to nurses and to social workers and to counselors, and yet he had to, and other outreach workers, and then he had to outreach, talk to the parents themselves, and essentially become this bridge to what a nurse or a doctor or a counselor would be, and then a program developer to essentially create a program to say, how are we meeting our students' needs? And so how many of our teachers, and that's all, I'm sure, unpaid labor that was on him to do, and how so many other teachers don't have to do that in other neighborhoods. And so that really struck a chord with me. And I know that it impacts the learning of students, it impacts their health, their outcomes, it impacts their entire growth. And so I'm excited to start listening to some more young people that were actually in high school. So we have Anu, who's a young person, an incredible environmental justice advocate here in Richmond and surrounding areas. And then we have Lizbeth. You've heard from Lizbeth again, inspiring young person from Youth versus Apocalypse, just out there running shit. I can't wait to work on her campaign in the future. And then after that, we're also going to listen to City Council member Eduardo Martinez share a little bit more around his experiences.
They sponsor, like I said on how Chevron sponsors, they really sponsor a lot of things at our school. They sponsor, there's this one club or program called Mesa. They sponsor that. It's like robotics, clothing, all of that, building things. They sponsor that, and it's, and no one, I guess no one really wants to or do not know what they've been doing, I guess. So, and obviously most people need the money, but I guess they're just ignoring all of that.
I know that, well, like this is like I tell people, but like growing up, like I did not know Chevron was like a bad thing. Like I remember like going to like the Cinco de Mayo events or like things like that, and them having like booths and giving away like t-shirts and stickers, or like I remember seeing like billboards with like them. Like I remember there's a girl at my school and there was a picture of her on a billboard and she was like doing some kind of like engineering thing with Chevron, which I remember everyone thinking that was hella cool because, like it seemed like Chevron was giving us so many like cool like opportunities and things. But and then like more recently when I learned about like what environmental racism was, I realized like Chevron is literally like polluting our air, our soil, our water, our land, and like a lot of people don't realize that because it's been kind of like a part of our daily lives.
And they also give money out to community members to make them think that, if I don't talk out against Chevron, Chevron won't give me more money, and I need more money to, to make things happen. The year that they were trying to have the city pay $90 million, to give back $90 million in property taxes. They did this big thing at the Contra Costa College where they gave out one of those big, mock-ups of a check for $50,000 to an organization. And so they were making a big PR thing, giving $50,000 away while they were trying to take 90 million from the city. But they don't talk about the 90 million. And so there's a lot of financial influence, I guess I'd call it that, where they give money away to get people to show appreciation for Chevron, so that they have this big PR thing, saying, oh, the community loves us.
I'm gonna touch on something really quickly because I'm fucking infuriated. Because what Eduardo was talking about, it's under the guise of we are the community, we give so much back, but they don't recognize how much they take from us. And recently I was in a town hall at our local college, the Contra Costa College, with the new president, Dr. Tia Robinson. And, Dr. Tia Robinson respected, out, but I'm going to call her out. She's outside of this community. This is her very first semester here. And in this town hall, in front of all of these different professors and students there, she very excitedly says that she is creating single-handedly this pipeline to get students to work at Chevron and Phillips 66, another refinery near us. And so I'm there and I'm flabbergasted, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is exactly what happens when outsiders come into our community and dictate what they believe is best for the community without actually listening to our community. We are listening. We are hearing what's going on. Our high schoolers know what the fuck is happening. They know that this is Chevron's propaganda. They know that they're buying us out. And yet it's so easy to come in here and just say, yep, we're going to get all of these new people to Chevron, when it goes against the very direction that so many of our community members, our community-based organizations, our movement leaders have been going. And I want to shout out Miguel Diaz, who you'll hear from, who's a CBE, Communities for a Better Environment intern, chiquitito, 18 years old, fucking the only student in that town hall that raises his hand and says, wait a minute, I am a young person and I have fought since I've been in high school, and he's only 18 years old, against Chevron. How is it now that you are creating this pipeline and you say that it's going to save our community and it's going to save our students and everybody's going to have job trainings? So it just really infuriates me. So I'm just going to step back because I know there's young people out here, Kevin and Alfredo, that are really impacted and have actually gone through this.
Mhm. Yeah, I want to give you space, Kevin, to share your thoughts on this, because I went to CCC, but you're currently at CCC. But I was going to point out that this really highlights, Sol, you took the words right out of my mouth, so I'm kind of mad, but this really highlights what happens when you have quote unquote community leaders that come, and lead places like the college without listening to the community, people that come and make decisions for us without actually listening to us and listening to what we know to be our best interest. I guarantee you most of the students at the college don't want to partner with Chevron, want nothing to do with Chevron. Us young people growing up in Richmond understand that Chevron is not a force for good for the community. They have been polluting our air and our water and our soil, like Lisbeth said, for generations. But yeah, Kevin, I want to open up the space for you, Kevin. Do you have any thoughts on this wonderful partnership?
Well, now I'm mad at you because you took the words out of my mouth. I feel like you said, it's just, I feel like for me, because like I'm the Associate Student Union president, I feel like this is like a prime example for me. I'm kind of fortunate enough to, and in a sense, be there because it kind of shows you a really good lesson of like, you really do need to listen to your community, even if like you don't know exactly like who's a part of your community or this new community you're a part of, because it's like, why would you support an organization that has done so much trauma, so much pain to so much people, and has taken away like so much things? And so it just frustrates me like enough, and it's just like it's a lot, and it's just, I don't know. I feel like words can't really describe like how I felt when I was in that meeting. I was mad, I was angry, I was sad, and I was just like, um, it was just frustrating, you know. I had to leave. I had to leave. I had to like step away from that meeting and just hearing all those things that she was saying. So yeah, I guess that's like what I could say.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly like I am new to the community and I can't even like fathom what that feels like to be in this space and to have been in this space and to hear people like bringing that rhetoric in a way that's like hopeful and jolly and like it's all good, you know. I think it's that's super frustrating, and I kind of did some research on this because you know, I'm just a curious person. And so I found out that
Our self-proclaimed nerd.
yeah, I'm a little nerdy, you know. But yeah, I like looked up how much the refinery makes, their revenue, their yearly revenue, which is $134 billion. And when oh, excuse me, this was for 2017. I found these statistics from 2017. $134 billion. I had to count the zeros when I wrote this number down because I have never even like tried to wrap my head around that much money. And you know, the Richmond Promise is $3.7 million also in this same year that they give to schools. And then another like 1.2 for job training. And you can just imagine what that looks like, right? Out of $134 billion, you know, about 5 million going to local community students. I know Alfredo knows a lot more about this, but that's just a tiny fraction. And yet, you know, folks are willing to kind of forgive and forgo all the negative stuff they bring to the community for this fraction, you know. Alfredo, you know all about this.
Yeah, I think this goes back to that point that Anu and Lisbeth were making. So they like to frame this as charity, but really what this is coming from is this ECIA grant, which we're gonna try to explain to you in a couple seconds, this super long, complicated process that went on. And so feel free to pitch in if you hear me miss on anything. But so this ECIA grant program was made after the 2012 explosion. After the 2012 explosion, Chevron needed to modernize the facility so that they could continue to operate. And one of the agreements that they came with the city in order to allow them to do that program was to provide these grants to the community. This agreement was entered between the city and Chevron beginning in 2016, and it'll only be available for the next 10 years to support community and youth sports. They're awarded on an annual basis.
The fucking refinery exploded. And remember, we've talked about this was the only class action lawsuit in the history of Chevron being here that even paid out residents for going to the hospital. We talked about that, and that was $250,000, right? So that's public health going to residents. Now the city of Richmond comes in and says, bad, Chevron. We need you to start paying up. You really hurt us here. And Chevron says, all right, let's go ahead and we're going to make it better. But the issue that is really fucking annoying to me is that workers had already said many times that they needed to modernize, that there was leaks in that pipe, that they needed to fix it, and Chevron ignored it. And then the city makes them pay and says, all right, not only are you going to pay students with the Richmond Promise, you're going to fund nonprofits, community-based organizations. That annual fund, the Richmond Promise, 3.7. Funding our local nonprofits, $375,000 a year. And then it's only for 10 years. And they had to fight. Our city council members had to fight tooth and nail in our city attorneys. And they are all paid with our taxpayer money. So that is our money fighting for Chevron to pay us back in scholarships. And then it just creates this cycle that we're always dependent on Chevron because of some fuck up that they do. And then at some point, the money is going to run out. And so I just think that there's so much more. We're going to go into funding and money and all of this actually in another episode called Buying Us Out. And so we're going to close up right now because this was just a really, really rich dialogue around the Asthma Club, what it means to be a young person, being in school. What do you see as you actually have to walk around with your inhaler, but then you have Chevron employees coming into your class saying that you should join their company, etc. And so we've heard a lot of those testimonials today. And so we're going to wrap up and I'll give Alfredo the floor.
Yeah, so we're gonna wrap up with a good friend of ours that we interviewed that you've heard. I believe they were in the second episode. Rio, they are a wonderful community member. They're an educator. They work with kids, teaching them science, getting them interested in STEM programs. Super tight person. Let's let them close us out.
I love my community. I love how resilient we are, although I dream for a day that we won't have to be. And I would say the thing that I probably just love the most about Richmond is just the youth also in our community. Recently, I was helping a lot of the seniors in our program work on their PIQs and college applications. And just being able to talk to them, hear their stories and just learn about all the amazing things that they have been doing at their schools and for their families and just for the community was just I don't know, it was so powerful.
Yeah, I just wanted to real quick say that I feel like Rio just basically just highlights her love for the community. And I felt like that love is just surrounded in the generational people who lives in Richmond, and you kind of just see that love and that connection with each other. But what I also just wanted to say is that I think in a sense we just need to keep that love close by to us because there's still hope for the future. And I feel like, and you could really see that you could just keep fighting, just keep going with environmental justice and all the other different activism that you guys are doing. Just keep going because I feel like you could already see changes happening through the new leadership with BACMed, them calling out Valero with the excessive emissions that's coming out from the refinery in Benicia. And also with the LA City Council, them signing an action to end all oil and gas drillings. It's those are real things that's happening now in California, and they're going to continue to happen here in Richmond. And I'm confident that, with everyone in this call and everyone, that we work with outside this call, we're going to try to make that happen.
Thank you, Kevin, for joining us. I think, yeah, the future is bright. The future is looking bright. Not only do we have more and more progressive people in office, but we have, people like us, you, me, you, Danny, Sol, Lisbeth that are in here taking over these spaces, shifting the narrative, taking back control from corporations, from Chevron here in Richmond, and working to empower our community, working to make sure that Asthma Club is not a thing in 10 years, that it's never a thing again. So I just wanted to close off saying thank you, Kevin, for joining us. Thank you, everyone who spoke this episode. We are forever grateful for y'all, for your support, for all the hard work that all of y'all do. And we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us, everybody.
Man, I love you, Richmond. Pride and purpose. And salute, man. Stay up.
And I know I ain't the hottest, but I promise Rich City I got us. Believe me, I got you. You got me, I got you. You got me, I got you. Hey, Rich City, I'll never let you go. You don't know that I love you, Rich. You don't know that I love you, Rich. rich city, baby.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listening Project podcast. A special thanks to the Richmond Progressive Alliance for making this podcast possible. The RPA's goal is to take power back from corporations and put it into the hands of the people. To learn more, visit their website at richmondprogressivealliance.net. Thanks so much.